Okay, so I made my ball. Again, mine's a mini ball. Yours should be a little bigger than this. But I wanted to show you a couple other things I realized as I'm doing this. One, on my paper that I'm working on, there's like a lot of dust at this point. You want to make sure you're kind of keeping that out of the way a little bit, because if you soak up all that dust when you come back to work on this page, then it could get stuck to your ball and dry it out really quickly. So you want to try to kind of keep the dust off if possible. It just helps it to stay more moist. The other thing that I want to show you is how to make some cool different attachments. And another thing about it staying like not getting all dried out while you're working is that if I'm going to work on some attachments for this, I don't want this just sitting out and drying out while I'm working on my other things. So I'm going to keep this in this bag while I build some of my attachments. I don't know how long it'll be in there, but also what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my clay out of this bag to build the attachment here and keep this sealed up so it doesn't dry out. But one of the things that I do too sometimes when I'm working on things is if I have something off to the side that I know I'm going to use in a minute, but it sits there and I feel like it's going to dry out, is I'll take like a paper towel and I just get it wet. Not like so wet that it's like dripping, but just, wet enough to where it's not dripping, but moist. And after you do this and you get it open again, you can take this damp paper towel and just kind of drape it over the wet clay that you're not working with right now, but you don't want to put it back in the bag, like that stuff that's kind of like in between. So I take something like this and I'll just aim this down so you can see. But I would just like lay this off to the side and just kind of like drape this over it just so that it doesn't dry out while I'm working on something else over here. So that's another tip of something you can do to kind of keep your clay from drying out. All right, so last but not least, let's make this into some cool shapes. One of the things I want to show you is how to make some really cool eyeballs. Of course, you can do this however you want, however it works for you, but I'm going to aim this down here so you can see. So I'm going to take like a ball of clay. I'm going to make a pretty big eyeball just so that you can see it, but not like too big because I need to fit on my piece. So I make a ball of clay. Again, my hands also, you don't want your hands to be super dry because your hands, the drier your hands are, it will dry out your clay too. So in between, wash your hands so that your hands aren't super dried out. You could take a little bit of water and then just kind of go like this so that you have a little bit of moisture. Anyway, so I'm going to make this little ball, and then what I'm going to do is I am going to take my knife, and I'm going to cut it in half so that I have two parts, and now I'm going to make two balls. One's going to end up being the actual eyeball, the other one's going to be the lids. This is a cool effect. So take these two balls, one of which has a cat hair on it. Okay, one of which I'm going to take the smaller of the two here, and I'm going to make this one be the actual eyeball. So I'm going to leave that one alone for now, and then the bigger one I'm just going to smush it. Try to smush it in a perfect little round disc. And as I do that, the edges are kind of cracking a little bit, so I'm just going to take a tiny little bit of water as I work so that my fingers aren't super dry. And I'm just going to kind of work this out. But you don't want to stick, so I'm going to do some of it on my palm so that I can easily keep working on it. A little bit of water. Okay, doesn't need to be perfect because I'm actually going to be smoothing this out even more once I put it on my sphere. But now I've got a disc and I've got the ball. And so what I'm going to do here is this disc is going to end up being the eyelids, and this is going to be the actual eyeball. So on this one, I'm going to come in with either, something sharp, so like your point of your pencil that you have, which is probably better than what I have right here. But I am going to make a little hole here so that it kind of looks like an eyeball like in there, like that. And then I could draw some little, zigzags or veins on there if I wanted to, or some lines. Maybe I'll go around and do something like this. A lot of this will get covered up by the eyelid, so I'm not going to go too far out with it. Okay, so there's my eyeball. Here's my lids. With my lid, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make sure that it's big enough that it can cover. And I'm just going to cut it in half. So I'm going to use my knife, but you can use anything you have that's sharp. And I'm just going to cut it in half. And then I'm just going to smooth the edge out just a little bit here. Again, making sure my fingers aren't too dry. And do the same thing with this side. Okay, and now it's time to attach that. Now, right now you're like, what the heck is she doing? I'll show you. It's actually really cool. I'm going to open my ball. And I'm going to pick which area I'm going to attach this on. So I think I'm going to try to cover something with it. So I'm going to take a more of a bumpy area and cover it with an eyeball. So I'm going to kind of pick this area right here. So first thing I'm going to do, score and slip. So as Miss Doherty showed you, I'm just going to use this fork. I'm going to actually dip it in the water real quick just to kind of get the water on the ends of the fork. And then I'm going to score. I don't want to score too big because I don't want to like stick outside of the area I'm going to stick the eyeball. But I'm roughing it up pretty good. I really want that to be like Velcro. Okay? And then I'm also going to do the same thing to my pieces. So on the back of the eyeball I need to do this. Rough that up or else it won't stick. So if you can see, that's pretty roughed up. And I'm going to stick that. I'm going to get a little bit more water here. And I'm going to stick these two together. And I'm going to really kind of shove it down in there. If you want to kind of indent your ball first so that there's a little dent for it to kind of fit into, you can do that. So as long as you don't break the the sphere. Okay, so that's stuck on there. And then I'm going to take the eyelid and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to score and slip on the side of it. And back on here again, just to X a little bit more. And you can see what happens when you lay this down on your piece. You start to see that you've got this cool looking eyeball. So now if you see there, it's almost like this eyeball is kind of like coming out of the piece. It looks a lot really lifelike and there's depth there. Like you can see inside to where the actual eyeball and then the actual lid overlaps. It's really cool. You could blend this in so that it looks like the eye's actually just kind of poking out at you. And then once you are able to fire this and then paint this, hopefully, you can come back and paint this with lifelike colors and it really, you know, looks really cool. So that's just a cool way to make an eyeball.